Hey, everybody. Welcome to What Fresh Hell Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Amy,
And this is Margaret. And today we're going to be talking about helping our kids manage their friendships.
which is like very ages and stages, right? I mean, my kids are old enough now, I don't have to manage their friendships, but I hear about their friendships. I have thoughts about the friendships.
Yes. We're going to discuss that
Okay.
all. And I think I've already solved it, but I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to get there
Don't
at
do it
the
too
end.
fast.
I already know what the answer
Oh,
is,
good,
but
good,
I'm
good.
not going to give you a spoiler. But first, Amy, let's start with mailbag. On our Facebook group, Mary Katniss shared the following meme. When I was like 5, my best friends and my favorite game to play was Mary, Kate, and Ashley, which was basically just hanging out like normal, but calling each other Mary, Kate, and Ashley. Do
Yep.
you know what this reminded Mary Katniss of and why she posted it?
She says that this reminded her of you playing Charlie's Angels,
I
which was getting your hair done. Yeah.
was surprised to see this meme. Like, I did not realize this was something that other people did. Just
Oh,
gather and just say, like, we're these people,
Oh,
and
for
there's no game.
sure. Yeah. One of my first jobs out of school was being a personal assistant, which often involved playing with the 3-year-old, with the person I was working for. And she would have me she really wanted me to watch Full House with her on the couch because Mary
Okay.
Kate and Ashley are the twins from Full House. And beforehand she'd say, "Who are you going to be while we're watching?" And I'd be like, "I'll be, Tim." And I wasn't that invested in Full House, but she had to be Michelle. Mary Kate and Ashley both played Michelle.
That's right.
So she
There
was
was
like,
no
"I'm
Mary Kate
Michelle.
and Ashley.
I'm
She's
Michelle while we're watching." I'm like, "Got it. I definitely don't want to be Michelle." And I could
It's
have the rest of them.
it's a Reddit thread thing, which is like, am I the only one who does this? And everyone's like, no. But I really was surprised to know that this was a go-to event for many, many people. Just pretending by just declaring you are that person and then kind of going on about your day.
My niece takes gymnastics and is very invested in her coach, Coach Brad. Very cool dude. But she will often at home say, like, no, I am Coach Brad. Like, if you bring up gymnastics and you say, "Coach Brad's so fun," yes, I'm Coach Brad, and you have to refer to her as Coach Brad for an evening.
That is hilarious.
Good stuff. Yeah.
And adorable.
Right.
We're talking about children's friendships.
Okay.
Amy. And we'll start with Michelle Icard, who we've had on the program.
So many of these experts.
I
We've had
know.
Michelle
Now
Icard
when
on
we
the
find an
show.
expert, we're like, yeah, we talked
Oh,
to
no,
her.
yeah.
We talked to him. We got them
Nowhere.
all covered. She did an interview with CNN with Sarah Clark, who is the co-director of the CS Mott Children's Hospital, who does a national poll on children's health and discovered some interesting things, statistics about how parents feel about their children's friendships.
Okay.
1 in 5 parents say their child ages 6 to 12 has no friends or not enough friends. 1 in 5.
That's sad and not surprising at all to me. I'm sitting here like,
it was so low.
Yeah. I guess that's it. I was going to say my sad reaction is 1 in 5. It's not 2 in 5.
No. That's what surprised me about it. I thought it would be higher, and I was surprised by it because I think I've thought it at some points with all of my kids, and so I was surprised that only 1 in 5 said that.
So many of us, I think, look at our children's friendships through the same lens as our own, which is like, but I was playing Charlie's Angels every day out in the neighborhood with whoever was around, right? My friends were like the kids who lived in the block, and we all just figured stuff out. But all of our kids, I think, spend more time home alone on screens. I had to have this explained to me when my kids went to college, that if your kid spends a lot of time in their room, they're all spending a lot of time in the room. It's different. So I think that's part of it. You look at it like, well, he doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
I do think this is something my parents did not think a ton about. And
No.
I think a lot of it was like, okay, we played with the neighbors. They came over and played baseball. And my sister and I rode our bikes around and pretended to be Charlie's Angels. Like, they definitely, I don't think now, I think that there's an emphasis and attention on it, and the way that play dates are structured. There's just much more parental involvement in the social lives of children. And that seems to have flip the script on.
Yes. And are they the right friends? Are they the right influences? Like there are definitely 2 ne'er-do-wells on our block that we kind of weren't supposed to play with, but they were around and sometimes we played with them. It was how it went. And also not that like, "Oh, your kid's 9, mine's 8, so I guess they can't be friends," right? Or yours is a boy, yours is a girl. Guess they'll never talk to each other. It was
Well,
just sort of go figure it out.
that is definitely something that we've heard about from a bunch of different experts is multi-age play is very important.
Yep.
And that's another thing that's disappeared. Because as you said, like, why would our kids be friends? Your kid is 8 and my kid is 10.
Right,
That would be
right.
ridiculous for them to be friends. They, in fact, cannot be friends. It is against the law. This was an interesting one, and I wasn't quite sure what it was trying to get at. 2/3 of the parents polled wanted their children to be friends with kids who came from similar families. I think this is getting at, like, those are the ne'er-do-wells, and, like, they want kids to only be exposed to values that align with theirs, which
Yeah.
I think can be, and I mean values like we don't, smoke in the 8th grade
Set
or
fires.
whatever. Yeah, we don't set
Right.
fires. Like, I think this kind of reads as like racism, but I think it might really be more about um illusion of control, which I
Right.
mean, I'm just teasing the spoiler
Right.
is going to be a theme of
Okay,
parents,
okay.
that like I can control, and I think we see this all over, both practically and in the news. I can control what comes into my child's life in terms of like what they see at a library, who they're friends with, what their teachers teach them, what anyone says around them. Like this illusion of control, I think, has very much snuck in.
This reminds me of The Crown. Did you watch the season that was all about Will and Kate at boarding school?
I did not.
Oh my gosh. So Princess Kate or whoever she actually is, she's Kate, Princess of Wales or whatever. Don't at me. Don't come after me. That her mother figured out that Prince William was going to Eton or wherever the heck he went. I think it was maybe St. Andrews for college. And she made sure her daughter went to that college. She made sure her daughter did the same like gap summer program. Like she just kept putting her
She was like,
daughter
"We're gonna make
in the
this thing
same
happen."
rooms with William because by hook or by crook, they're going to get married. Now it's a TV show. I don't know how exactly that hewed to reality, but I think kind of. And so that's right. My daughter's going to be a princess and she got her
That's gonna
wish, but
That's
you know.
going to go against a lot of our learnings today, which is you have
Don't
no
do-
control over this. It turned out it worked really, really well for them.
Right.
And they did go to St. Andrews because I visited there and I was in a taxi and someone was talking about St. Andrews College. And I said, "Oh, what is it famous for?" And she's like, "Well, that's where the prince and princess went." And I was like, "The prince and princess of," and she was almost drove off the road. She was like, of England. Like, okay,
The Crown, the
that's just
Crown.
not on my radar. I apologize. 4% of parents say that their child has too many friends. This sounds like the tired among us. I am tired of going to birthday parties.
There is always that answer in a poll. It's like, who are those people? Who
Yeah.
are the 4% of people like my kid is too socially
It's
integrated?
like 4 out of 5 dentists. You're like, what is the other?
Right.
dentist? I saw
Go
a really
ahead, chew the gum.
I saw a really funny meme, and it was this doctor saved my life, 4 stars. And then the doctor wrote back, "What do I have to do to get the 5th star?" It was like, right, like, okay, what? You're all the way there. You saved the guy's life. Yeah,
I don't
the
think we're speaking to
4%
that
of parents,
4%.
We're not talking to you. If
This
your
isn't
child
for you
has too many
today.
friends, come back for a different episode.
Right.
Then they talked a bit in the interview, which I thought was interesting, about the role of parents, and that Sarah Clark, who had done the study and has written on this subject, her overall recommendation at the end of the piece was that for kids in kindergarten through 4th grade, parents should only intervene in a play date or in friendship issues when safety is a concern. That was her overall takeaway. And I think that this is a pushback a little bit on the kind of new play date where it's 2 moms sitting having coffee while their kids play in the same room.
Yes.
And the constant conversation is, no, give him back the truck. Okay, well, let's share. Okay, let's cut it out. You have some and you have some. And that her pushback is that part this is a really interesting thing that I think about this whole topic that we forget about. Friendship is a difficult skill. And it's a skill that emerges in kids. But you and I have both done improv. I'm currently teaching an improv class, and it is so hard to do improv. Get people up, no script. Like, it goes wrong in 4,000 different ways. And friendship is kind of like a very long improv scene. You know, you don't know what the factors are coming in. You don't have a script. And there's unexpected behaviors, and there's a lot of skill sets like attention and turn taking that you need to bring into the relationship. Kids are developing those skills at different levels. So one of the things I wanted to lead with on friendships is this is actually quite hard.
And that it's not supposed to be that two 4-year-olds playing together who both really like the green truck the most are going to have conflict. And that doesn't mean that's not a safety concern.
It's not a safety
I
concern.
mean, it might become a safety concern, but even then, that they're kids.
And that if we don't let our children navigate friendship situations, they are not learning the skill of friendship and interaction.
Okay.
And that you're, let's all gather in the Wilson's yard and play, let's say, baseball, right?
It was wiffle ball. That's what it was in my backyard.
Wiffle ball, safety first. I like that. The amount of skills that you are developing in a bunch of kids playing wiffle ball in the Wilson's yard are hard to even measure. It's multi-age kids. It's the bigger kids have to look out for the little kids' safety. It's fairness. Someone has to referee and umpire that situation. People have to agree, like, well, no, you did tag him out and we all saw it.
Right.
And so you can either have a tantrum and go home and we're going to, talk about you, or you can agree with all of us and we can keep playing. That the skill building in those relationships is something that when we talk to people who talk about free play, that it is so important to learn those free play skills.
So I have a really unique perspective on this, which is that so my backyard really was the neighborhood backyard. We had a sort of, dirt wiffle ball field that people just show up. They would just show up in my backyard after school. And one of the people who used to show up in my backyard after school is now my brother-in-law. He married my husband's sister. So I've known him all his life. I knew him before he ever knew my sister-in-law. And he was just saying, we were at a dinner recently, and he was just remembering my brother, who's about my age, just a little younger than me, and how he would, he really looked up to my brother. He was about 5 years younger, and that my brother was, a whiz with the wiffle ball, but that he could pitch, he could alter his pitching to be at the right level for like the kid brothers and kid sisters who might show up to play. But then one time, some toughs from another neighborhood showed up in our yard, and they wanted to take us on. And he said, and that's when, wow, he's like, that's when we saw like the Sidewinder come out. They didn't even know my brother had these pitches in his pocket that were ready when like the other kids, the toughs from the different neighborhood came to play. I mean, I'm using toughs very advisedly here, but they were like, they had to pull out the stops and work together as a team to show these kids from Dunmore what was what. And that's just what you're talking about, that skill of being together and saying like, okay, I'm not going to bean this 4-year-old on the head. I'm going to throw something easy to him, let him run around the bases, and then he might go inside with his brother.
And I think the series of play dates and organized sports that has taken up a lot of this free play has been detrimental to this skill development. And I think that's right. I mean, you learn skills, right, of like I think you also really learn skills of people, engaging people. And my kids have started now, we live in a big football town, going out to the football games on Friday nights, and they're of varying ages and abilities to navigate. But the football games is a whole thing. There's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of different behaviors going on. There's a lot of different social interactions, a lot of peer pressure, a lot of bad behavior. There's just a lot to unpack going on.
Right.
And we've been talking about, okay, here's the code to text me if you get in over your head, whatever it is that you need to navigate those situations, because I think they're behind on those skills. And there's another factor that makes kids behind on this. There's another factor that makes kids behind on these skills, Amy. I'm going to let you cogitate on what that might be after the break.
Before we go back in, I wanted to, just before we go back in, did you see that there was a question here from one of our listeners?
No.
I'm not sure it's useful, but I'll throw it in here, and if we run out of
stuff to talk about,
which doesn't look like we will, but I'll put it at the bottom here. This was a listener suggestion, but it's I think it's about how do you know when your kid is being the bully, which is a little bit different.
Got it.
Okay, as you were, we'll go back. We'll pick up. Should we clap and you take us back in?
One and Amy, have you in this time? I should have given you the Jeopardy music. Do 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 do. Do you know what the big factor is?
What was the question that makes it harder for kids to make friends
in our current age?
I mean, I was thinking about this sort of COVID.
Yes, correct.
Discontinuation of skills.
Ding, ding,
good.
Ding, ding. A lot of kids lost 18 months to 2 years of these skills entirely.
Yeah.
And lots of writing and studies about the fact that depending on what time, I think it affected all kids, and then certain kids a lot more than others.
All kids, some, and some kids all. Yes.
There you go. If you had a 2 to 4-year-old during that time, right? Really tough ages to completely miss social skills. And so I think after the pandemic, it's worth dialing back in on what friendship skills look like, and the basic idea that as we are trying to make up some reading skills and math skills that were lost during the pandemic, we also need to concentrate on making up social skills that were lost during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about preparing your child to make and keep friends.
Okay.
I feel like on the list of things that we think about in parenting, we don't talk about this as much as we should.
We think it would just come naturally, and I guess I would say it comes to some kids very naturally. One of my kids is the kid that was constantly swimming up. She learned to swim at a pretty young age, and she would just swim up to other kids in the pool and just start talking to them, and they would usually be sort of bemused and include her, and that's how she made friends. Other people, not so much.
I can pick one of my kids out. I mean, crowd of teenagers, and there was my 5-year-old in the middle of the mix, and you could tell the teenagers were like, "Get this kid away from us!" But
funny for 10 seconds.
They would not be deterred. They were like, "My besties, what's up?"
Right.
You can teach your kids social skills, and that you should emphasize social skills sooner rather than later. And social skills are not necessarily
it's not which fork to use, right? We were just talking about this in the Do Manners Matter, that
they're not manners.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not thinking about other people. Sharing, or the kind of things that I think maybe when we're hovering at the play date, make sure you share, make sure that those kind of skills we think are social skills. Starting conversations,
yes,
is a social skill, and a really difficult social skill for some.
Yeah, Love on the Spectrum, which I love that show. They have a coach on there that's helping people who have autism get ready to go on blind dates or second dates. Mm-hmm. And so much of it is about reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about your intense interest, and then you're going to say, so tell me about yourself, and that it's a skill that has to be taught, again, to some people more than others. But I think most kids would be like, well, I'll just tell you about Pokemon until it's time to go home.
Yeah, listen up. I got 3 hours on Pokemon.
Exactly. There's 46 types. Let's get started.
Let's go. We don't have a lot of time. I got a lot to say.
Right.
There are social skills counselors and classes available for kids who struggle with this, and I think they can be really helpful. It is, I think, very worth thinking of this as a skill that needs to be taught and learned.
Mm-hmm.
Picking up on social cues is another skill that is needed to make friends. And this is something that, listen, I've been at a lot of cocktail parties. Adults struggle with this, right?
Yes.
I mean, how can you not be reading my face that in your third hour of telling me about the bond market, I don't care, So picking up on social cues. And again, we are in 2024. And the bad news is that we're probably over hovering. But the good news is You can buy flashcards or you can make drawings. What is this person's face saying to you? They have social stories cards that I've used with some of my kids. Let's put these in order. What order do you think these happen? What do you think happens next when you're reading a story, right? How does the elephant feel that he realizes no one came to the party? These are the
sad
kind
elephant.
of sad is
I'm
the
thinking about
answer.
that sad elephant. Yeah.
But having conversations that really focus on social cues and social skills.
I just
And
this morning had an example of a skill that I thought, oh, I need to make sure that my kids know to do this. I was talking to somebody. It was at like a morning, parents' school event, and everybody's chit chatting with their coffee beforehand. I'm talking to a parent. Another parent comes over because they know the parent that I'm talking to and just barrels in and starts talking to the parent who I was talking to, but didn't stop and say, like, I'm sorry, I don't think we met. My name's Jill, whatever. They just started talking and then they had a conversation. I'm like, I'm here. Like, you came up and entered our circle, but now you're just sort of like, I'm only interested in this person, not in you. How to enter a conversation gracefully
yeah.
is something that I guess I don't always find easy. And so that's something else that our kids could probably use a little coaching around.
Right. And similarly, these are sometimes hard to read cues, and they will be much harder for some kids than
Mm,
others. That right. And in the other way, there's 3 kids and one of them is standing around and the 2 are talking only to each other. Oh,
right.
someone's not involved in
Right.
the
That noticing. Right.
conversation.
Right.
Noticing, right. Following social rules is a little bit more manners, right? That like, how do you talk differently in a church than at the football game? Like really being able to kind of read the room. And this is something some people do really naturally, and some people really need coaching on. Especially, I think these are good to keep in mind when your kid is struggling. Which one of these, where are they struggling? Are they struggling with starting conversations? Are they misreading social cues? Are they acting incorrectly in certain environments? And then the fourth is listening, which I think is a skill that sometimes my most socially skilled kids, this is where their struggle is it might be someone else's time to talk.
Uh
You're talking
huh.
too much.
Uh huh. Right. You're too good at entering
You
conversations.
are too good at entering, and now everyone wants you to leave the conversation because you have been talking straight. And this is a lifetime of learning, and this is stuff that nobody gets. There's no finish line or bar. I mean, I am a over talker, and I have occasionally said to my spouse, oh my gosh, was I talking too much at that party? And, especially I get a couple of the gin and tonics flowing and I'm like, I think I'm hilarious. And I'll come home and I'm like, I have regrets. I have regrets. You get this stuff wrong. And so I think it's really smart to present it to kids as a constantly developing skill.
What is the right age, do you think, to start talking about these things?
Verbal. So 18 months old, basically. I mean, not
Okay.
really, but really, really young,
Yeah.
I think, a 3-year-old is going to have a tendency to just burst into the room. I found it. Go. Oh, actually, we're talking. Hold on one second. I mean, we had a rule growing up. You had to say, excuse me when you were entering a conversation. I'm still working on my children with that, who barge in. Oh my God, look what I found. And so I think it's 100 million lessons on this, but I think it starts very, very young. I sometimes will find myself saying to my kids, what is my face telling me? Is this a good time to ask mommy
Look at my face.
to go to Target? Look at my face. Let's read the room. Mommy is in no mode.
There is another thing that I see kids struggle with sometimes, kids in my life, kids I know, that they perceive somebody being mean to them when maybe they are just playing something else right now. Maybe they are deeply involved in playing trucks with Carson and they don't want to hear about Pokemon right now. That's not mean. That's you being, maybe that's your overture being rejected, but nobody's being rude because you didn't read the situation correctly. And the kids are being mean to me when they're not being mean. They're just not
I have this conversation
Getting
quite
it.
a lot right now. Like,
Okay.
it's okay for kids not to want to play with you and not to want to have conversations with you. And you have to find your own way. So
Yeah.
if there's a group of kids and they're all doing something that you don't want to do, that's not their problem. That's a you problem. And yeah,
Mhm.
I guess you have to bring a book. That's a bummer, but you've got to
Mhm.
find something to do that um, works for you. And I think that it can feel in social situations. I mean, kids naturally, I think, define the world as something that's happening only to them. It
Yes.
is hard for them. They call it theory of mind. You and
Right.
I have different minds and priorities. And that, especially maybe kids on the spectrum, kids with intense interests, it is harder for them maybe to understand that like an hour-long conversation on trains is not gonna fly with every 4th grade social group.
Or even just, for, oh, like the Mean Girls meme, like, I'm walking into this parents' coffee this morning, there's those 2 over there holding court, and they're the cool ones, so everybody's flocking to them, and they're being exclusive. Well, not being exclusive, they haven't seen each other in a month, and they have a lot to talk about that you perceive, um I had a kid who had a difficulty entering conversations, and I think that it's easy to see those, um, turned backs and engaged conversation as a "you are not welcome" sign,
Mhm.
when really it's just like, how to get in there is a little tricky, but they're not doing that to keep you out. They're not thinking about you at all, and to get over that can be hard. And so it's easier to just be like, "They're mean, they're not nice."
Yeah, and I think that those are the conversations with tweens and teens that we're having all the time right now from, "Oh, well, they're the popular kids." Well, what does it mean to be popular? Why are
Mhm.
they like, what's going on with that? Let's break it down. And does it really involve you or doesn't it involve you? And like maybe someone's going out of their way to target you, but maybe not.
Yeah.
You asked before about when to start this, and this is a list of suggestions that I thought was really useful. And the number one is play board games, and these start very, very young because they teach us how to stop, how to wait, and how to take turns.
Huh.
Simon says, bingo, zingo, whatever they are, encouraging listening skills and practicing conversation. And we were talking about this during the pandemic that the Zooms were getting really old. And so one of the things we suggested is do an activity Zoom, that the conversation is secondary to the activity.
Right. I
And
remember you saying this and what a good idea it was at the time. Yeah.
I think sometimes for some of my kids, they need an activity that sitting and talking, that's my favorite day. I mean, I have people come there like, what should we do? I'm like, we're doing it. We're sitting
No
here.
preamble
We
required.
both
Yeah.
have a beer and this is the day. My sister-in-law is like a very active. Have you seen the TikTok that's going around? She's a Zoomer around her. It's like a little kid's voice and and it's a little kid on skis. And he goes, I'm just not a Zoomer around her like you. I'm more of a layer around her. And it's become like repurposed a million times. People use the audio and they're just like sitting on the couch on their blanket. But I'm not a Zoomer around her. But yeah, I think that for some people they are Zoomer around. Like it
Mm.
helps sometimes for kids to facilitate interactions to have a secondary activity because it's not just like your only hope here is the social skill of having a very long conversation that goes back and forth.
And sometimes
Um,
if you have a kid that isn't a Zoomer arounder, I mean, it isn't like you love to talk and you like to, sit and chat. It isn't like kids who don't love to talk are necessarily Zoomer arounders. They can be sort of still and quiet too. And then maybe it's better to start with that one-on-one play date. Like what I realized for my kid who had a hard time entering social situations that we needed to be early for stuff. Not the last one showing up at the party, but the first one showing up at the party so that they
mhm.
could chat with the birthday kid and get comfortable before 10 other kids came in, or early for soccer practice or whatever it was going to be, so that they had a chance to get going and warm up with one person.
And this is, again, just stuff you can practice. Let's practice going to the door because
Mm,
I know you're afraid the parent might answer and they're
mm,
scary because they're a parent. Like,
right.
how do you come to the door and say hello and then go see your friends? You can actually role play different situations and really work with kids and like, because the things, and I think that it's important, and I am talking to myself I can get very dismissive of it. It's not scary. Just go order a hot dog. It is scary if it's scary to the kid.
Right.
And so kind of acknowledging, okay, well, let's practice. What would you say? And then I'm busy. I didn't hear you. Or someone cuts in front of you in line. Like, let's go through the things that could happen, because your goal is to get the kid comfortable in that situation, not to convince the kid that they're an idiot for not being comfortable in that situation.
Well
Which is
said.
unfortunately sometimes my go-to. All right, we'll be right back. Amy, I'm ready to skip to my spoiler.
Okay.
And then we'll discuss it. What is your role in helping your kids make, keep, and manage their friendships? Extremely little is your role. Your role is to support them when they are away from the friendships, but you really have a very, very small role in who they make friends with, how they make those friendships, why they make those friendships, and how they manage those friendships.
Whether those friendships are maintained or reciprocated. I mean, you're twisting the knife right now.
Sorry, but it's true.
You can support the kid, but you can't intervene to improve situations. Like, what about like when you and I are best friends and our kids just aren't cut from the same cloth? They're just extremely different 10-year-olds. That's a situation that you can massage and work on and try. But if one likes comic books and one likes basketball, maybe they're not going to be great friends.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I think every aspect of your child's friendships have very little to do with you. And that's the good news in a lot of ways. So that your role, and I mean, this was harder when my kids were younger and when, but you're bestie, you guys besties for 3 years.
Yes.
And we go to the parents' house every Friday night because we're
What do
all
you mean?
besties.
Right.
What do you mean? It's not my job. It's not my role. We may still go, and you may not speak to each other the whole time. That's fine. My parents had friends growing up who they were extremely close to. And then they ended up moving together. And the kids, we were like grown by that point. And we had nothing in common with their kids. Really nice kids, nothing wrong. There was nothing about us that was ever going to be friends. Like, I was like goth weirdo and their kid was like popular cheerleader. It was insane. It was like putting like a lion and a ostrich together and being like, be besties. It's not going to happen. And I think the gift that you can give yourself is that your job is let them play the game. You're the sideline coach. You know, when they come back to the huddle, you can give them a little advice and send them back out. But you're not running out onto the field and you're not like, no, now here, let me show you how to throw the ball to this one. You're the sideline coach only. And you really, even if you decide you want to get in the game, you just don't have that much control over how it's going to go. You cannot make other people like your kid. And you cannot make your kid have successful relationships or pick who they're going to be friends with.
It's hard. It's really hard to watch your kid going through struggles with friendship or not being able to make friends or sort of join in the reindeer games kind of thing. It's really hard to watch that. And that's true. And that kid is having a hard time. And I don't disagree that there might not be that much you can do about that and less as they get older. And what you really don't want to do is let your disappointment and frustration be the second arrow for them.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
That my mom really wants me to just go over to this group of jocks and start talking to them, and I can't do it, and they don't understand why I can't do it, and then she's gonna be lecturing me on the way home about why can't you just walk up to them? Yeah, exactly. It becomes like that you don't think they're doing it right becomes like another thing for the kid to be mad at you about. It's something to be wary of for sure.
I think that the best thing that you can do for your kids is be a really safe haven. I have talked about this before. My sister had a horrible social upheaval as a young kid and was involved, basically had a friend group who dropped her. This happened to me as well. I will say it happened a little bit worse to my sister, but I'll use myself as an example. 7th grade, I was running with like a group of 12 girls maybe. something went wrong. I was at a bar mitzvah. I like danced with the guy who one of them liked. Whatever happened, it was like a wolf pack. They turned on me and they cast me out. And that was it. I basically didn't have a friend for the next 18 months. And every day at school, I mean, it was 7th grade. They went out of their way to, I mean, they would do bits almost where like I
Mhm.
would walk up and they would all walk away together.
Mhm.
It was a social conditioning thing and it was awful.
Awful.
And I know that my mom wanted to call all of them on the phone and tell them what terrible people they were. But what they did, what my mom and dad did instead, which was a million times more useful, is every night at dinner would say, "That's terrible. I'm sorry that's happening. 7th graders are just total morons. And this is the kind of stuff they do. When you find yourself on the losing end of it, it is the worst feeling in the world. And this is not forever. But right now, it stinks." And I think that that is how I walked through those times without, in fact, I think it made me feel stronger than if they had gotten on the phone and started calling people and met with the principal and they really have to be nice to her and they were such good friends. They basically said, "You can handle this. You have very little control over what other people do, and this is terrible." And that, I think, is the correct way to handle these situations.
And just swallow your own pain about it. Let your kid know that it's being seen.
Yeah.
What about when your kid is being sort of pulled under by an Eeyore, let's just say, that's very close friends with them? Um, maybe you're the kind of parent that's like, "We're nice to everyone, and you are gonna invite, like, the loser with weird pants to the party because that's what we do in this family," right?
Mhm.
And then your kid becomes I'm coming up with an extremely complicated hypothetical situation, but I think we all recognize this as something we either have been in or a kid has been in, that your kid is sort of stuck with the kid who's really dragging them down. Lots of, late night phone conversations about the boyfriend breakup or whatever, that they're being sort of pulled down by a kid and they need to take a step back
Mhm.
and they feel like they can't.
Mhm. That's
What
where
do you do in
you
that
are the
situation?
sideline coach. I think you
Yeah.
can say they come to you. You don't call the kid. You don't intervene. You don't call
Mhm.
the kid's mom and say,
Right.
your kid really needs to stop dragging my kid down. You say, "Here are the parameters of this. Is this a situation where you're going to be unkind to someone else because your friends tell you to do that? Like, is that a good choice for you? Is that, does that feel like a right choice?" And honestly, the answer may be yes. And then that's what they choose.
Right.
And I've been having a lot of conversations now that I have tweens and teens about text chains and, the kind of behavior that goes on the phones. And I have said to all my kids, I don't look at their phones. I don't monitor their phones. But I said, you better be sure that anything that you ever put on a phone, you better be sure you're ready to read out loud in the school office in front of me and your school principal,
Mm.
because that is real. That will at
Mhm.
some point happen. If there's
Mhm.
nonsense going on, somebody's going to raise a red flag. And are you sure that this is something you're comfortable? And that's it puts the decision back on them, but it involves a strong influence from me. It's not, I don't check their phones, but I kind of, and it does come up, if stuff is going on the phones and this happens in school, someone is going to get wind of it. And are you using your phone? And this is something that I'll ask them, once every couple weeks at dinner. Is there anything going on in the phones? Is there anything you're struggling with? How's the group chat going? Is it getting, and we had one that we had to shut down. Are we getting near that again? And all right, we're going to the football game this weekend. What are we preparing for? You know that the football game is also filled with moms. Like, what behavior don't get up to stuff because I'm going to hear about
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And you have a wide range of friends who have very different house rules than maybe we have. But our house rules are our house rules, no matter where you are. So I don't buy too much into, I mean, having seen this play out in my own life, that friend is no good. That friend is pulling you into trouble. You can be friends with whoever you want. Just understand that we have different rules, and that if you get engaged in activity that is beyond our house rules, you're going to be in trouble,
Mm.
and like just really helping them. I think kids, they don't need us to run. We've said before, you're not in the boat with them. You're on the shore as they drive the boat. And hopefully sometimes they drive the boat by and you're like, you're going too fast. Be careful. There's rocks over there. But you don't want to be in the boat. You want them to figure out how to drive the boat. And I think friendships is a huge area where you have to understand your locus of control and how much control you have. And I think we get very easily sucked into, I'm going to call her mom. They can't treat you like that. That kid is trouble and they're going to bring you down. Those are all the things you can't control. You can control how your child is ready to be a person in the world who's going to face this like really tough, challenging improvisational scene with a lot of unexpected stuff that comes up. And then I think you lay out a bunch of rules, like this is what you text me if you need to come home. You get a free pass. If you make a stupid mistake, you can call me and say free pass and just come home and you won't be in trouble. We'll get you, we'll help you figure it out. We're on your team, but we expect good choices.
We get it so wrong. I mean, just think about the amount of popular culture ink that has been spilled. And I always use like the most Goldilocks alert example of Eddie Haskell, which was on the show Leave It to Beaver that was from like, I think
even
the
before
50s, 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on in reruns when I was a little kid. And Eddie Haskell would come over, and Beaver and Wally were brothers, and Eddie Haskell would come over and he would always be like, oh, Mrs. Cleaver, what a lovely dress you have on today. Oh, it's so nice to see you again. And Mrs. Cleaver would always say like, why can't you be more like that boy, Eddie Haskell? That's really somebody that you should be friends with. And then as soon as Mrs. Cleaver would say like, well, it's nice to see you boys. And she'd leave the room. And then Eddie Haskell would be like, tonight behind the gym, firecrackers. He was in so much trouble and the parent was totally missing it. And I think we can miss it both ways. And I think about like my spouse wanted to not be so nice to somebody recently at a party for reasons that had to do about friendship issues between their kid and ours. And I was like, I guarantee you that parent would be completely has no idea this beef is going on. And just because you're getting a one-sided readout doesn't mean that that's the real readout. And don't get involved. You can only make things worse.
Yeah, I wanted to just cite this line, Huffington Post article, what to do when you don't like your kids' friends, which goes into something you said before. And it's something that we've talked to you about in other realms. But I was like, this is a touchstone I don't want to leave without saying. Judge the behavior, not the person. So when you're the Eeyore or the bully or the kid who's lighting firecrackers behind the gym who your kid is hanging out with, I don't like that behavior because it stays away from a trap that I think we get into with our kids. They're a bad kid. You shouldn't be with them.
They're bad news, right.
Your kid has a very different experience with them. They're so nice. They're so fun. They're so creative. I bet there's lots of things about that kid who's great. But you only see them lighting firecrackers or smoking cigarette. Oh, they're vaping. I can't have you be around them. Judge the behavior. I hate to see them vaping. And I would hate to think that has an influence on you because you guys spend a lot of time together. And I find that behavior really a problem because it causes these health problems or whatever. Or what I see is a behavior where that person has a tremendous need for you. And I see it having a detrimental effect on your homework or your day or your tiredness or whatever. Keeping all the conversations that you have with your kids about behavior versus the person, I think is such a good touchstone.
That's well said. And I do want to say before we end that we're saying like, stay out of it. You'd never help. It's never that. There are times that your kid does need you to get involved, that the friendship is a problematic situation that your kid needs support around. And when it gets to that point, you'll know.
I think
and
that's
maybe
right.
You do. It's not never true, but I would say, 95% of the time it's not true. The kids are being mean to them. Well, maybe you're not getting the whole story. And maybe your kid just needs to learn some skills.
Ask yourself hard questions when it comes up. Do I really need to intervene? And yes, I've said before, I have friends who have real PTSD and issues as adults from bullying and things that happened to as children. Do not completely ignore what is going on because it's not your business. But I think just we push back against involvement because I think that's our default and a lot of parents' default. So just ask yourself hard questions. But if it's becoming, you will know, I think, certainly if there's anything physical, violence, anything like that. And I think if there's a sustained pattern of behavior that is causing a marked problem with your child, call the school counselor, get involved, call the other parents, start helping. But for the overall, let your kid play football and drive the boat and be coaching from the side.
Football in the boat. You're in the sidelines.
Listen, for some reason, your kid is playing football in a boat. That is not a good idea.
I mean, it's not a terrible idea.
Could be fun.
Bumper football boats. That one's free, guys. Take that.
Solved it, friends. We solved it. That's how to help your kids and their friendships.
Well, Hellions, you've heard me mention it a few times. My book, Happy to Help, Adventures of a People Pleaser, is coming out January 7th. It's available for pre-sale now. You can check the links in the show notes for this episode. You can go to our website, whatfreshhellpodcast.com, where there's a link, or just go to wherever you buy books and type in Happy to Help. You'll find it.
You don't know this, but you can't wait to read this book. It is fantastic, and you can't wait. So go get it. Pre-orders, big deal. They make a big difference. So please go get it today. Don't wait for it to come out. Order it now. And with that, friends, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody.